officially back last night. There are games tonight. There are games Saturday. There are games Sunday. And there are games Monday. We'll be live with you, by the way, on Labor Day, not taking Labor Day off. So we will be here, Danny G and myself, on Monday with you. Try not to ever take Labor Day off because it's the first weekend of college football and it's the opening week of the NFL season. And I know a lot of you are working, and if you're not working, you want to listen on the podcast, or you're still up and about, moving around, getting ready for the official start of the college football season and the official start of the NFL season. So just so you know, we'll be with you Monday and every day next week, and hopefully I won't miss a day again until Thanksgiving. That's my plan. It's my plan. We'll see whether or not it ends up coming to fruition, but that is my hope. All right, so what did we learn last night in the opening night of college football? First thing I would say we learned is that UCLA is not close to being back. Usually it's year 2 where a coach takes the step with his team if that coach is going to be dominant and a wildly successful coach at the new school that he has taken over at. Instead, for UCLA fans last night, the Bruins were flat out awful. They were atrocious. Cincinnati was okay. They were just okay. They should have won that game by 3 touchdowns. Cincinnati didn't even play that well. But UCLA only had 2 plays all night long. They hit 1 big pass play for a touchdown on a totally busted coverage, and they made a nice catch from a receiver on a deep ball. If you're just waking up right now, I'm sorry, UCLA fans, for having to rehash with you. But there's a lot of optimism surrounding Chip Kelly, and so far through 13 games, none of it, maybe with the exception of the performance against USC, has offered any positivity whatsoever. That was an atrocious performance by UCLA last night. Cincinnati, coming off an 11-win season, had to replace a lot. Again, they didn't play that fantastically well or even very well at all. They should have won that game by 3 touchdowns, but they ended up winning a big opener in Cincinnati. So the Bearcat faithful have to feel good. If you're a UCLA fan, even in the woeful Pac-12 South, I think you have to be troubled by what you saw. What beyond that did we learn? Well, Trevor Lawrence, a lot of hype all off-season long. Clemson star quarterback who we last saw slicing apart the Alabama defense with a lot of big-time third-down throws in San Francisco, in the Bay Area, for the national title game. He came out against Georgia Tech. He was just okay. Just okay. 2 interceptions, 1 touchdown, 13 of 23 passing, under 200 yards. Not that impressive of a start for Trevor Lawrence. Now, the opponent was clearly overmatched. Georgia Tech had the triple option offense for years under Paul Johnson. They're now trying to go back to a more of a spread offensive attack, and they just don't have the offensive weapons to be able to do anything in terms of major successes, especially against a team as good as Clemson. So we basically saw kind of what I expected to see. I thought the score of this game would be something like 49-10. Instead, it was 52-14. Pretty close. By the way, we got the game right on Cincinnati. We got the game right on the game between Clemson and Georgia Tech. And we also, from a gambling perspective, got this other game right, the Holy War. Utah wins its 9th in a row and served notice, finally, that maybe there's a decent Pac-12 team out there. Because in the wake of the UCLA loss, as Stadium's Brett McMurphy tweeted, the Pac-12 has lost its last 5 to the American Athletic Conference, and the Pac-12 has lost its last 5 games to the Mountain West Conference. That is not an ideal endorsement if you are out there in the Pac-12 fandom trying to argue that your school or your conference deserves a spot in the playoff. The Pac-12 success has been awful of late, and Utah may well be the best team in the Pac-12 South. Cal Whittingham might be the most underrated coach currently coaching right now in college football, but they got their 9th straight win in the Holy War. That game also went under, so not the kind of guy to brag or draw attention to myself, but we went 3 for 3 last night if you bet all the picks that I gave you to end the 3rd hour of the show yesterday, or you just bet the picks that are posted on my website, outkick.com. Right up there for everybody to check out. Got a bunch more picks for Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. All right? So that is where we are in the world of college football. Also, Minnesota manages to hold on, beat South Dakota State. We got a big win from Central Florida. not a lot of drama. Even UConn managed to get past Wagner, which is pretty wild that Wagner almost beat UConn. All right, that is all of the college football news that I believe is out there. ACC Network launched. It was not a very successful launch. A lot of people not able to watch that game between Clemson and Georgia Tech. I don't see things going forward being better in the near future. I think the ACC Network is going to be a lot more like the Pac-12 Network than it is the SEC or the Big Ten Network. So that is what is going on out there in the world of college football. What about in the world of the NFL? Well, there's a couple of big stories. One, Ryan Fitzpatrick has officially been named the starter of the Miami Dolphins, meaning that a former UCLA quarterback on a night when the current UCLA quarterback was not very good, the former UCLA quarterback is now the backup in Miami. Josh Rosen's first-round draft pick 2 years ago, now on his second offensive system, and he has been not very good. But getting beat out by Ryan Fitzpatrick is pretty tough. So that was the only uncertainty, the only real quarterback debate drama that was still ongoing in the world of the NFL. So Brian Flores sweeps away that suspense and lets us know that Ryan Fitzpatrick will, in fact, be the starter for the Miami Dolphins, at least to begin this year. And bigger news in terms of a team with the hopes of contending for the Super Bowl, Jerry Jones, in the wake of the Dallas Cowboys game last night, came out and said flat out that he now expected that Zeke Elliott might well miss at least one game, if not more. Here's what Jerry Jones had to say last night.
I'm operating as though right now he's going to miss regular season games. My entire expectation for what we're putting together as a team right now would anticipate with him holding out maybe in training camp that he's going to miss games. I just accept that.
That's Jerry Jones now saying after a long time, we don't think Zeke is going to miss any games, now saying he expects for Ezekiel Elliott to miss games. What does that mean? Well, if Tony Pollard's still available in your fantasy football league, which he probably is not, you might want to grab him. If your fantasy football draft hasn't happened yet, you might not want to grab Ezekiel Elliott. And if you're betting in NFL futures, not a lot of value right now on the Dallas Cowboys just because of all the tumult, all the uncertainty surrounding Zeke, surrounding Dak, surrounding Amari Cooper. I know they gave Jalen Smith a new extension, but there still is a lot of money to be spent down at Big D, and Jerry Jones has to decide how to spend it, and it sounds like he's willing to let Ezekiel Elliott miss some games. Now, maybe this is going to turn out like when Emmitt Smith held out in 1993, although to be fair to Emmitt Smith, he didn't have a contract at all. But it took the Dallas Cowboys losing their first two games that season for Jerry Jones to open up his pocketbook, bring back in Emmitt Smith. Maybe if you're Ezekiel Elliott, you're sitting there saying, if history repeats itself, maybe the value here, even though I hate for my team to lose, is for my team to be mediocre or bad, not as good without me as they would be with me, and put some pressure on Jerry Jones to actually get that deal done. So those are all the stories that are out there right now on a large degree surrounding the NFL and college football. Anything that I missed, Danny G, from your perspective of watching football last night?
We only got to see highlights of Trevor Lawrence because of the fact we couldn't see the ACC network. The one thing I'll say, that really bad interception he threw, did you see his hustle as he tracked down the defender that intercepted him? And that paid dividends because then they went on to intercept Georgia Tech in the end zone.
Down.
Yeah. Watching him hustle, that was awesome. He obviously didn't have his best game, but just watching him leg that out, that was great. You're right about UCLA. They looked just like UCLA of last season. And it's curious why their star running back, Joshua Kelly, was standing there on the sideline with his helmet on.
Yeah, and Chip Kelly was asked about that at halftime. And so I feel like it must be like a double secret probation or secret suspension because it's downright strange that Chip Kelly didn't put a name and also kind of tried to dodge the question at halftime as he ran back out about why or why not. One of his star players was not competing. What about you, Dub? Anything else that you noticed on the night of college football in the NFL?
I mean, you pretty much covered it, but one thing I will say for Utah, they did look impressive running the ball, but their quarterback, it did not seem or did not play very well last night. He was 13 for 16 last night with like 105 yards, but down the field passing was just not really in the game plan at all. So that's just one thing if I was a Utah fan I would be concerned about because they do have very high aspirations this season, and if he doesn't play better than that, then I don't think those are very realistic.
Yeah, and the holy war for BYU to lose a ninth straight is a tough spot to be in, and it's not necessarily going to get a lot easier, although we don't know what Tennessee's talent's going to look like. But BYU is traveling to Knoxville for a game next weekend against Tennessee, which is a pretty big one for both teams. Obviously, BYU doesn't want to go 0-2, and Tennessee feels like they need to win out of conference games in order to put themselves in a decent position for a bowl game, given how tough SEC conference play can be. All right, what about you, Eddie? Anything that I'm missing?
No, I don't think anything that you're missing. We saw Clemson and Texas A&M both win, and they'll play each other next week, so that'll be one to look forward to.
That's a good point.
But again, UCLA, watching that game, and someone who really thought the Chip Kelly hire was great, I think everyone did. They looked like a poorly coached team, and I'm just shocked that they looked so bad.
Yeah, it wasn't just that the offense was atrocious, which it was, and that they
penalties,
only made 2 plays.
The stupid mistakes.
They weren't lining up right. They didn't look like a well-coached team.
I know it's a season opener, but it was bad for a season opener even.
Yeah, and I will say also that crew last night, which was, I believe, a Pac-12 crew, they threw a lot of flags and picked up a lot of flags. And partly that's, hey, good communication. Let's not have penalties enforced where we don't 100% need them. But also, I don't know that I've seen that many flags thrown and then picked up as a result. I thought it was just a disjointed, not particularly very smooth game. And it reminded me a lot, honestly, of the Florida-Miami game, where I felt like Florida probably should have pulled away, and I feel like Cincinnati should have pulled away last night. Never happened. And as a result, came down to later moments in the game than it certainly should have. Roberto, what about you? What did you notice last night?
Yeah, like Eddie said, man, UCLA looked so terrible. And then if that quarterback is the best they have, completed 30% of his passes, it's awful. Where's Bob Toledo, man?
Yeah, where's Bob Toledo indeed? By the way, quick poll from you guys. Just a yes-no is all I need. Does Ezekiel Elliott start game 1 as the Dallas Cowboys starting running back? Danny G.
No.
What about you, Dub?
No.
What about you, Eddie?
No.
What about you, Roberto?
No.
I agree. It's unanimous. That's sometimes dangerous. But up until yesterday, maybe late last night, Fox Bet had the odds that being more likely than not that Zeke would not miss any games at all. And Sal on our show, Cousin Sal, has been adamant that he'll be there. But it certainly seems like something changed for Jerry Jones last night compared to the night before. Big kickoff coming from Fox Sports as Ohio State will be hosting FAU. Lane Kiffin headed in to play against Ryan Day. First game there. We'll get to that game in a bit. But I want to start, Joel. I'm sure you were watching last night. What in the world's up with UCLA? They were atrocious last night. So bad.
Yeah, that was. Can the year have started out any worse for the Pac-12? My gosh, Arizona loses to Hawaii. And listen, Cincinnati's a good team. I don't want to say like this is a total dumpster fire, but Cincinnati won 11 games. They're a good team. UCLA was on the road. Their quarterback mysteriously dropped the ball twice. Probably the call was the wrong call, but you can't overturn it on the fumble that UCLA picked up and returned for a touchdown. All of that being said, at the end of last year, I thought UCLA was turning a corner. I thought that they were getting better under Chip Kelly. I thought that they would come out this year and show some marked improvement, and they didn't. And that conference, unfortunately, it's more about the conference. That conference is just abysmal right now. And if Oregon goes out and loses to Auburn, it's over. No one's going to they're 0-5 in their last 5 games against the AAC. Not ACC,
yeah.
The AAC. I think that they're something like 0-3 or 0-4 in their last 4 against the Mountain West. Like, the Pac-12 is awful.
It is. If Oregon loses to Auburn, and that game is taking place on Saturday night and is, I think, the biggest and best game of the opening weekend of college football, then what you hit on is likely true, which is the Pac-12, even if they have a team really look good, is not going to get the benefit of the doubt because they don't have any scalps.
None. Utah looked okay at times, and you have to give them a much more of a pass because of the local rivalry aspect, with BYU. But I think Utah is a good football team. They again proved last night that they don't have a great ability to throw the ball when they really need to. but they're going to have a great defense. They're going to be able to run it really well. They're probably going to win that South Division. But this is here's the thing that they're going up against. Contrast it with the SEC, and sit back and you might want to record this because I'm going to throw a little praise here at the SEC.
Well, you must be. I would say you're drunk, but we know you stopped drinking, so I don't even know what excuse you could possibly have.
I don't know. Maybe it's early for me, even though I'm on the East Coast. But and this is a hypothetical, and you love hypotheticals. But think about what the SEC has a chance to do in the non-conference. Okay, and they already took care of one of these. They beat Miami, so Florida beats Miami. There's a good chance that Miami is in the ACC championship game against Clemson at the end of the year. Now, Auburn has a chance to beat Oregon this weekend. There's a really good chance Oregon is in the Pac-12 championship game at the end of the year. LSU and Texas play next week. There's a really good chance that Texas is in the Big 12 championship game at the end of the year. Sake of argument, let's say the SEC goes 3-0 in those games. Clay, there's a really good chance none of those SEC teams are in their championship game.
Yeah.
So they're going to be able to point at that and say, whoever plays for our championship, probably Alabama and Georgia, should both get into the playoff.
No, I mean it would be a strong argument if that were to materialize. All right, UCLA didn't look good, and certainly Utah gets the Holy War win, 9th in a row for Kyle Whittingham, which is a incredible performance by him and by his program. But let's go to the other big game, obviously, that was taking place, at least because one of the teams is really good. What did you see from Trevor Lawrence? Were you actually able to watch this game? Did you have the ACC network in Columbus?
No, not in our hotel. So I had it for a bit at the restaurant that we were at.
Yep.
So I watched most of the first half. I was impressed with Clemson. I mean, you come out there. I mean, shoot, it's a league game, and they took care of Georgia Tech as if Georgia Tech was, Furman or someone like that. I mean, Clemson is just on another level. They have reached that level where they are like Bama. It's no longer that we just have, man, who can beat Bama? I mean, Clemson and Alabama have separated themselves from the pack. I didn't know, and I didn't have a great look at it, but whatever happened before the end of the half was kind of strange. I think Lawrence, made a kind of a mistake. But here's the thing that I think is so important about Clemson is that they are not one-dimensional. How many teams do we see play in college football that are really good at something and have nothing else in their arsenal? And for Clemson, you can take away a wide receiver, you could take away Lawrence, you can try to take away ETN, but the others will get you. I mean, so ETN and his performance was tremendous. That team has got that conference is, I think, really bad. And they're going to walk to the playoff. Like, put them in pen and Sharpie, whatever you want to do. Clemson is going to the college football playoff again.
Putting in that context, Todd Furman, you were on with us Wednesday on Lock It In. Todd Furman says that the only team that will be the tightest game potentially Clemson will have from an odds maker perspective all season long, at least in the regular season, is Texas A&M next week in Columbia. In Spartanburg and in Clemson. They will be a 17-point underdog. I mean, that's pretty amazing that in their entire regular season, they will be favored by 17 or more against everyone.
It shows you their dominance and also the state of where the ACC is at. And this is what happens when, you can make it. Here's what's crazy. You can actually make an argument, to some degree, that the Pac-12 throughout the conference might be as strong or maybe even a touch stronger than the ACC. You can make that argument. I don't know if it's right or not, but you can at least try. But when you've got the dog, when you've got the alpha, it's the trump card. I would argue that maybe the middle of the Big Ten is better than the middle of the SEC. And yet when you've got the trump card, when you've got the elite team, it carries the day for the perception's sake. So the ACC, no one's going to talk about how the ACC is struggling and how you can really only put 2 teams in the top 25 right now, maybe a third. I mean, if you kind of reach, you can put a third in there, but definitely not now after Miami lost. But it just goes to show you how much it pays to have at least one team playing at the top. And right now, that's what Alabama has done for the SEC, and Clemson has certainly done for the ACC.
Yeah, the analogy that I would make there, Joel, and we're talking to Joel Klatt. You can follow him on Twitter at Joel Klatt. You can watch him tomorrow with the FAU against Ohio State game on Big Fox Network television. That Clemson right now in the ACC is a lot like what USC was in the Pac-12 back when Pete Carroll, Matt Leinart, Reggie Bush, Lindell White were on a different level than everybody else in the conference. But you didn't talk about the Pac-12 as being a weak conference because USC was so good. And I know there were other teams that challenged them every now and then, kind of blipped up on the radar. But that is what I think Clemson is doing to the ACC right now.
And similar to how Clemson, you could say, like, quote-unquote, struggles with Syracuse, USC would go to, like, at Washington State and maybe, play a tough game, or at Cal and play a tough game. But you weren't confusing Washington State and Cal with someone that was going to do something nationally in those years. So I think it's a good analogy. Pains me to compliment you. You're sitting there basking in the glow of me talking about 2 SEC teams in the playoff. But that's how I got there. You asked me, so I was on Lock It In, what was that, Wednesday?
Yes.
And before the segment started, you were like shocked. You were like, hey, did I see that right, that you have 2 SEC teams in the playoff?
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, I do. But, Clay, it was that equation that I gave to you during the course of this interview about if you can beat all the other teams that are playing for their conference championship, whether they win those games or not, with teams that are not in your conference championship, I keep going back to that. Oregon is hands down one of the top 2 teams in the Pac-12. Auburn is maybe, 6th in the SEC? So, that's everyone will point to that to the rest of the season.
We're talking to Joel Klatt. Now, you're calling the Ohio State game home opener for Ryan Day, career opener as a head coach for Ryan Day at Ohio State. Justin Fields, new quarterback at Ohio State. What do you expect to see happen with Lane Kiffin bringing FAU to town? Is this going to be an interesting game in your mind?
I'm having a hard time getting to that point just because, Lane is having to replace a lot of guys on offense, in particular Devin Singletary, who's been outstanding over the last couple of years. Nobody's run for more touchdowns than him. By a factor of about 12, I think it is. He was sensational. And they were such a run-heavy offense. They got a quarterback situation that's not great. They've had a competition and just kind of settling on a guy, Chris Robeson, to go out there. He's the one that transferred from Oklahoma. So here's a kid who is actually sitting in the quarterback room for a spring football with Kyler Murray and Baker Mayfield, and now he finds himself as kind of a fledgling quarterback at FAU through 12 touchdowns last year, 12 interceptions. And they just don't quite have the juice to face a team in Ohio State that I think is an elite team talent-wise. I would have picked them to win the Big Ten and go to the playoff for sure if they weren't replacing Urban Meyer. I love Ryan Day. I think he's a fantastic coach. But Clay, this sport, our sport, is still about the head coach. If the NFL is all about the quarterback, I think that college football is all about the head coach. And Urban Meyer won 90% of his games at Ohio State. In 7 years, they lost 9 games. 9. They never lost more than 2 games. I mean, his success was staggering at Ohio State when you look at his record. And he was, as you know, a personality that is the biggest personality in the room. And so that can be really tough to replace. They're trying to do that with a guy who I think is a great coach, but he's very different than Urban, and they're doing that with a quarterback that transferred in that lost a quarterback battle at Georgia. So there's some things that give me, cause for concern, but overall, the defense I think is going to be absolutely loaded. They've got new coordinators, Hafley, who comes in as he was the secondary coach at San Francisco. He's a really good coach. Greg Madison moves from Michigan, and now he's at Ohio State. It'll be a little bit different scheme than what you're used to watching Ohio State, but I think that they're going to be an outstanding team. I really do. And a guy that I think might have a monster year is J.K. Dobbins, their running back. He had a great freshman season with J.T. Barrett as his quarterback. He was okay last year, ran for 1,000 yards, wasn't great, but a lot of that was he didn't have the threat of a quarterback run next to him. Now he's going to have that back. And I think J.K. Dobbins could have a monster year.
All right, I want to give you the larger context question for college football if you look up at the top, and there's a little bit of stuff for you to follow. I know it's early in the morning for you coming from the West Coast to the East Coast, which, by the way, you're going to be doing every Saturday because you're going to be on basically every Saturday at noon now. Is this going to be a struggle for you to be calling games? You're going to have to move from the West Coast?
No, I'm not going to move from the West Coast. I live in a bubble, and I'll remain there. Thank you very much. No, I mean, it's not a struggle, and in fact, I love it because I get to watch more college football now than I would have in previous seasons.
No, that's key.
And I also get to get home on Saturday night. So this is a good schedule for me.
All right, so let's go into this, all right? So Jalen Hurts is obviously going to be starting for Oklahoma. He was previously the starting quarterback for Alabama. You've got a situation where Michigan has got their starting quarterback of Shea Patterson was formerly the starting quarterback for Ole Miss. You've got the quarterback for LSU, Joe Burrow, was formerly the backup quarterback at Ohio State. The game that you're calling tomorrow morning, Justin Fields was formerly the backup at Georgia. Out at Washington, you've got Jacob Eason, who is the starting quarterback there. He was previously the backup at Georgia. And you've got Kelly Bryant, who used to be the starter at number 1, Clemson, and he is now going to be the starter at Missouri. I might have missed one or two of these moving part quarterbacks, but is this quarterback?
You've got Brandon Wimbush at UCF. You've got Hunter Johnson at Northwestern, who came from Clemson. I mean, they're all over the place.
It's crazy. So, is this good for college football to have this much movement at the quarterback position?
I actually think it is because I think it gives fan bases hope, that maybe it can change quickly. And think about what Lincoln Riley and Oklahoma have done. Baker Mayfield started at Texas Tech before he came to Oklahoma. Kyler Murray played at Texas A&M before he came to Oklahoma. Now Jalen Hurts. This is their third straight transfer quarterback.
Yeah, it's wild.
They have not started a recruited quarterback since, now I'm totally blanking. I mean, before Baker.
Yeah.
I don't even know who that is. What is that, Landry Jones?
It's a good question.
Anyway, I can't even think of the last time they started a recruited quarterback.
Who did Baker beat out? It was the guy who went to Texas A&M.
Trevor Knight.
Trevor Knight.
Go.
I think Trevor Knight was the last quarterback they recruited that they started at Oklahoma.
Yes, you're exactly right, and they did it in that Sugar Bowl.
And then, of course, Trevor Knight ends up transferring to Texas A&M. They basically traded Kyler Murray for Trevor Knight almost.
Right, and which I mean,
a bad deal for A&M there.
But it gives. I guess I bring those up just because it gives the fan base, it gives a program, it gives those people hope. Plus, from an individual perspective, I've long argued that it's way too one-sided of a contract, the national letter of intent, versus a coach's contract. And a coach's contract pays him millions of guaranteed dollars, regardless of if he sucks or if he wants to leave. Now, I know that the buyouts if he wants to leave and everything, but generally if he wants to leave, it's for more money somewhere else, and someone else is taking care of that buyout. So, again, the one-sidedness of the contract, if you're just looking from a legal perspective, it's what we hold the kids to we don't come close to holding the coaches to that, which I think is wrong, right? Now, do I want kids transferring in the middle of the year? Like, for instance, what Jake Haener did at Washington. He's like, he loses the quarterback battle, and then he's like, well, I'm going to take my ball and leave. I don't love that, to be honest with you. Jack Sears at USC. I don't love what they're doing and just entering the transfer portal. So I think that if we can give some elasticity and if we can give these players a little bit of control over their lives and of their career, that's a good thing. However, and I know this is long, but bear with me for a second. I don't love
actually. Can you come back with us and close out the segment here? Do you have 10 minutes?
Yeah, I'd love to, because this is actually a bigger point. So
you're on the soapbox. I got to get out so we get our advertising dollars in. This is Outkick. I'm Clay Travis. He's Joel Klatt. We'll be right back with him next on Fox Sports Radio. Hate to brag, but your boy has started off 5-0 in college football gambling, including 3-0 last night. Really quickly before I go back to Joel Klatt, here are the picks for the weekend. Tulsa against Michigan State, Oklahoma State, and the over in the Oregon State game. Syracuse Liberty, the over. Ole Miss Memphis, the over. South Carolina, North Carolina, the under. Bama over Duke. Northwestern Stanford, the under. FAU at Ohio State, the game Joel Klatt is calling, the over. Toledo against Kentucky. Mizzou, take them against Wyoming. Georgia, Vandy, I may go to this game on the over there. And the biggest game of the weekend, Auburn over Oregon. Line now up to -4. And Houston, Oklahoma, the over. A lot of games there. If you want them all, and that went fast for you, you can go to Outkick.com and scroll down, and you'll see them all. All right, Joel Klatt, finish your case about – what's that?
5-0.
5-0 start. 3-0 last night, 2-0 on College Football Week 0.
Well,
I'm hot.
I mean, listen, a lot of nights for you start well, but you still end up in the gutter.
That's exactly right. Last night didn't start very well either. You ever got woken up, kids having nightmares? One of my kids had a nightmare last night at 2:30 in the morning, and I'd get up at 4:30, and I couldn't fall back asleep. So I just been up since 2:30, like in the middle of the night, just kind of hanging out. It's the worst, the worst. But you want to finish your soapbox case on why coaches, if you're going to have perpetual free agency basically for coaches, then players should too.
If you don't mind, the question was about, is it good for college football to have all of these quarterbacks be transfers,
yes,
and have played at other schools? And we were going down the list of that. And I said that it is good. It's good from both the player's perspective and the fans' perspective. The fan base gets a chance, and a player has more elasticity and control over his own life and own career, which is great. I also talked about the fact that the legality of the national letter of intent and the restraints that puts on a person versus a coach's contract is crazy, and it's totally out of balance. Now, here's the one thing that I don't love about it, is that the way that they've done this is the transfer portal. And the reason that I don't love the transfer portal in the season is that it gives kids an automatic out as soon as they face adversity.
Yeah.
And as we know in life, we're all going to face adversity at some point. Something's not going to go well or not go our way. Even if it eventually ends up working out for us, we've got to go through hard times to get to those end points. You talk about it on Wins and Losses all the time, which is a great podcast, and our episode is up. You can go check it out, Clay and I.
And we got good feedback. People love that, right?
It was a good listen. It was a good podcast. But Clay, everybody that succeeds has to overcome something.
No doubt.
And everybody, you think Tom Brady at one point thought at Michigan, like, man, this isn't working out? At one point in his deepest moment, yes, I'm sure he did. And I had that thought. Guys that succeeded to Heisman Trophy level thoughts had those thoughts. I'm just telling you, I hate the fact that we have a mechanism where kids can run to as soon as they face adversity. So I would say that the transfer portal should be open except for when the season is active. I would close the transfer portal as soon as you start practice and open it up on December 5th, the last week of the season. I don't want kids entering into this during the season. It just gives them an out. And that adversity, I think, needs to be faced for some of these kids in order to grow from young men to men.
Outstanding stuff from Joel Klatt. You can watch him tomorrow, 12 Eastern. He'll have the Ohio State FAU call. He'll have all the big games for Fox this year, and he will join us in the final segment of every Friday show, final hour of every Friday show. Good stuff. Have a good game tomorrow, Joel. Appreciate all of you. We've had a fantastic week. Go download the podcast.